The Unova Tour was one of the largest events of 2025, and it's no secret, it kind of sucked. I personally didn't play the whole weekend, and those who did left the weekend feeling like something was missing. Something was missing. The magic the youth events typically have just wasn't there. And today I'm going to talk about why. What was missing from the Unova Tour? Why did it feel so dull compared to the past events? And I know some of you may be thinking,
well, that's just how it is. The global tour event always kind of sucks because of the in-person events, and they're always so good.
Listen, I didn't play the in-person event this year, but all of my friends did. I talked with all of them, and everybody said that this was easily the worst tour event that we've had in person, and I didn't miss all that much. Except for Fleece King, who got 3,000 shinies and 200 hundos from 100 raids. So although yes, the in-person Unova Tour event was better, it still wasn't great, and most people who played it kind of just treated it as like one huge raid weekend. So why did this go so poorly, and does this say something about the potential future of Pokemon Go live events, like the upcoming Go Fest, which was just announced for 2025. Let's start with the most important part of the weekend, by far hands down, raids. The biggest release of the weekend was Black and White Kyurem, and in order to get them, you had to do an absolute load of raids. I think it was something like 10 raids per form, which is a lot. 20 raids at the weekend is a lot. But it was super worth it because Reshiram and Zekrom and Kyurem are all very, very good legendaries, and they're all worth raiding. It's great candy. And the fused forms that you could get from them throughout the weekend are like some of the best in the game right now. So super worth the raids. Not to mention, obviously, all of the legendaries, they could be shiny. They had special catch card backgrounds that you can get. So overall, the raids were really worth doing over the weekend, and most people did them. But unlike past events, there were no free raid passes throughout the entire weekend at all. You just had to use your one daily free raid pass. You might have a second right now because of the seasons. I don't know, do you? Corey, do you know? Do we have a second free raid pass as a part of the current season? No. Who knows? And the no free daily raid passes during the Unova Tour was pretty painful for a couple of different reasons. For one, as I'm sure we all experienced, myself included, the catch rates for the legendaries felt low. Although what I think happened basically is the catch rate for the legendaries was normal, but on a big event like Unova Tour, where there's so much else happening in the game, there's wild spawns that you want to be catching, there's eggs and shiny regionals that you want to be hatching, there's field research you want to be hunting, there's so much you want to be doing at once that just sitting there spending 5 minutes trying to catch a legendary Pokemon, like, it really feels harder to do and longer than it actually is. So although I don't think the catch rates were like made harder for legendaries, they definitely weren't made easier, which was really felt. And because the catch rates were, as they typically are, a lot of people ended up losing the legendaries that they paid to raid this weekend. I myself had a couple of them flee from me after spending like over 5 minutes hitting excellence, and it's just like, oh my god, you took all this time away from me and then you run? Which I get. I mean, it's part of the game. It's how raids work. You know, it's always been like this. So I understand that that's just like how it is. But again, it just feels extra tough on a weekend like this when it's supposed to be big, fun, and exciting, and you're stuck catching legendaries that are super hard to catch, especially with no free raid passes. And then the shiny rates, the IVs, the special backgrounds also just kind of felt low across the board. Like, it was just hard to get a shiny. It was hard to get a catch card background. It was impossible to get both at the same time. Those of you who did get one, congratulations, that's amazing. I'm very jealous. But again, ironically, probably the shiny rates, the hundo rates, the catch card background rates were probably the same as they always are. Legendary raids are 1 in 20 shiny odds. The hundo is always very difficult to get. But again, just because of everything else happening, it just felt like everything felt lower, you know? Especially because this is a boosted weekend, you know? But the raids, nothing was really boosted about them. And on top of that, again, like we said before, in order to get the new fused legendary Pokemon, you had to do a ton of the legendary raids, which again, no one had free raid passes to do them, so you had to cough up 18 raid passes to even get both of the new Pokemon throughout the weekend. So no free raid passes, terrible catch odds, no boosted shiny rates, and a super high amount of raids required to get the new stuff kind of just created a pretty unenjoyable experience for a lot of people just in the raid section, which again was kind of the biggest part of the weekend. And on top of that, Niantic support tweeted, "Trainers, we are aware of an issue where trainers could not obtain special backgrounds from Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem raids after 11:59 p.m. local time on Sunday, March 2nd. We apologize for the technical issues which caused this. Impacted trainers will receive timed research that awards encounters with guaranteed special backgrounds equal to the number of encounters they would have received during the event during the impacted hours. Stay tuned for more details." Which is great that they're doing this, and honestly, it's kind of nice to just like get a bunch of free legendary encounters with guaranteed special backgrounds, which is super cool. So this is kind of better. Honestly, like, I wish I did raids during this time and missed a bunch of them so I could just get a bunch of guaranteed special backgrounds, because you didn't get that during the weekend, but that did happen during the weekend. So obviously Niantic fixed this, and that's super appreciated, but it doesn't change the fact that it kind of like watered down the experience during the actual gameplay weekend. Now, how could this part have been fixed or avoided? It's kind of easy. To me, it's easy. I'm not a developer, so maybe it's not that easy, but personally, Safari Balls could have been made available, or Ultra Ball, I guess not Ultra Balls, but Quick Balls or Safari Balls could have been made available during this event, which I think is a must. We have to, during these major global events, especially if raids are a big part of it, gotta have some sort of ball that makes catching the legendaries easier. That was the best part of the, what was that, the Safari event, or oh god, I'm gonna get flamed in the comments for this, for not remembering it. I'm sorry, it's been a busy day. Well, whatever event it was last year, right, December, right, where we had the mighty Pokemon spawning in the Safari Balls, it made the game so great. It was so fun having the Safari Balls and having high catch rates and just being able to, like, actually grind. So I think having that, especially during a raid-focused, like, global event, where raids aren't the only thing happening, I just think it's like a necessary thing. So I think, personally, if legendaries are a huge part of an event, like a tour event or a Go Fest or whatever other big global events, there should always be balls that makes catching easier so that you can like get through more raids, which ultimately makes them more money. And any event that has a significant amount of raids required in order to unlock big new things, like fused Pokemon, should always have free daily raid passes, in my opinion. And that's it. Those two things, I think, would have completely fixed the entire weekend in terms of raids and made the experience way more enjoyable. But obviously raids weren't the only problem, and fixing them wasn't the only solution needed for the Unova Tour. And the next issue is also legendary related, but not in raids, in the wild. As part of the last 4 tour events, we had roaming legendaries in the wild, meaning you could find and catch a shiny legendary from that specific generation out in the wild for free, which made for some like super fun moments and very rare catches. Like I remember at the Las Vegas Hoenn Tour, I think I was trying to catch a shiny Latios for literally 20 minutes. Like, it was painful, but I ended up catching it, but it was so fun. But for the first time ever, this tour, Unova Tour, did not have roaming legendary Pokemon, and there was no announcement made about why or why not. My theory, simply put, free legendaries just don't make money. But who knows? There might be other reasons, or maybe this was just completely overlooked. But the obvious fix for this issue is just put the roaming legendaries back in the wild. Even if it's just one legendary that you could find in the wild from the generation, this would have been great. And Unova is the biggest generation with kind of a lot of legendary Pokemon. This would have been a great one to have roaming legendary Pokemon. And just the big question is, why would you take that away after 4 years? 4 consecutive years of the same thing, and everyone loved it. It was one of the most beloved features from the tour event. Didn't have it this year. Now, we all knew this next one was gonna be a problem, but I don't think we understood how big of a problem it was actually gonna be. Shiny rates. If you didn't know, the tour events didn't always have trash shiny rates for global. And actually, there didn't even used to be a difference between in-person and global, because the first tour event was back in 2021 during the lockdowns with the Kanto generation. So everyone played on the same weekend, the event was fully global, and it was honestly perfect. The raids, the hatches, the research, and most importantly, the spawns were all fantastic. If you played that event, you will have remembered it is easily the best tour event that has ever happened, and we all very much so look fondly back on it. Then in 2022, we had the Johto Tour, where we all noticed a slight decrease in shiny rates, but the event was still great, and depending on which version you chose, specific Pokemon would have boosted shiny rates in the wild, which was a super sick feature and helped kind of supplement the lower shiny rates. And it wasn't until 2023 where we saw things really change. The reason why is because that was the year that Hoenn Tour happened, which featured the first ever in-person live tour event in Las Vegas. And what basically happened was they made the Las Vegas event super amazing, shiny rates were very high, it was very fun to play, and they made the global version a bit watered down. Specifically, shiny rates were the thing that was mainly affected between these in-person events and the global events, and they were way lower than both the in-person events and the previous global events. From that point on, we kind of all knew that like the global tour event was cooked. The Sinnoh Tour in 2024 was the same, the in-person was very, very good, and the global was just okay. And now in 2025 with the Unova Tour, it seems like the whole thing was just made worse, the in-person included, which is impressive because the rates were already like kind of rough for the Sinnoh Tour. And this obviously created a super kind of overwhelmingly underwhelming experience for a lot of people who ended up playing Unova Tour. I asked you guys on Twitter how you felt about the weekend, about the event. most people didn't have great things to say. And the reason is, at the end of the day, the reason why these tour events are so fun and everybody plays them and people show up and grind them is for the shinies. I mean, it's you get the chance to hunt all the shiny Pokemon from one full generation. So like if you're missing Pokemon from Unova for your shiny Pokedex, like it's the day or the weekend to grind to catch them. Like people show up and play for the shinies. And that makes it really hard to do when the shiny rates are like absolutely abysmal, like they were during the weekend. And the solution here is simple, kind of just like the rest of the solutions. It's just like make the shiny rates higher. They don't have to be the same as the in-person rates. And again, I'm biased here, obviously, because I travel to the events, but I believe that the in-person events should always be like the best experience because people like pay actual real like money to travel and go to a place, and it is the one thing that sets Pokemon Go apart from every other video game. So for them to lean into it kind of makes sense. So like the in-person events, sure, make them better than the global events, that's fine. But you don't have to make the global events suck. It feels like the global events like gotta suck now. You know, like before a tour event felt like this crazy like Go Fest like insane experience. Now it kind of just feels like a more glorified normal Pokemon Go event with like some boosted shiny rates and like some extra things happening. You know, like it feels more closer to like the average than it does like the not average. So raising the shiny rates in the wild would like solve a lot of this. But what that wouldn't solve were the spawns, which was another problem during this event. Not only were the shiny rates low, but the spawns that you could get, like the Pokemon you could actually catch in the wild, kind of sucked. Which is funny because, fun fact, Unova is the largest generation in Pokemon. So you'd think during an event like the Unova Tour, it would have the most diverse pool of spawns, the most like fun spawns, like the biggest spawn pool, but nope. It kind of sucked. We already talked about no wild roaming legendaries, which is like a big reason as to why. And I think the main thing is just there wasn't really anything super exciting to hunt in the wild like we typically have during these events. The Kanto Tour had the brand new shiny Snorlax and brand new shiny Ditto debut, which was a huge hunt. Johto had tons of new shiny unknown on the incense, shiny evolutions spawning like Tyranitar, the shiny legendary beasts were in the wild. Hoenn had a ton of new shinies, including Kecleon, which was a huge hunt, along with Latios and Latios in the wild. Sinnoh Tour had the Rotom hunt, the shiny Rotom hunt, the new shiny Basculin on routes, and the Lake Trio legendaries spawning in the wild. Then with Unova, we had shiny Deerling. The costume Pikachu was kind of underwhelming. The habitats featured good enough Pokemon, but the really good ones didn't seem to spawn all that much. Pokemon like Vanillite, Roggenrola, Tortuga, Axew, Clink, Cryogonal, Timber, Archon, Emolga, Rufflet, Dino, Scraggy. Barely found any of them, and I don't think I got any of those shiny throughout the entire weekend, and I was playing pretty hard on Sunday. So just unlike with the previous tour events, there just wasn't really anything super exciting to hunt in the wild. And again, the stuff that was exciting seemed like it didn't really show up all that much. Except Zorua. That was an awesome touch, and I think is what really made Unova Tour stand out. At the top of every hour, Zorua spawned everywhere in the wild for the first 2 minutes, which was a great opportunity for people to catch shiny Zorua, which is one of the most elusive, rarest shinies in the entire game. So that was sick, and that definitely was a big hunt during Unova. But that was about it. Everything else in the wild or on incense just kind of felt underwhelming, which is why most people ended up focusing only on raids. So how do you fix this? It's the largest generation in Pokemon. There's so many cool Pokemon in the generation. We absolutely needed higher spawn rates of the more rare, cooler Pokemon, the more like 10-kilometer egg exclusive stuff, plus spawns of evolutions of certain Pokemon. That would have been great. And obviously wild roaming legendaries, or just more spawns in the wild in general, which again just kind of feels like a simple solution. It's just like put more Pokemon in the wild that people actually like and are excited about, and like more people have fun in the wild. Another thing that happened, and I'm not sure how many people actually caught this, but when Niantic was advertising, or when Pokemon Go was advertising the Deluxe Tour Pass in the in-game news, it stated by purchasing a ticket, you'd get a specific avatar pose. But when the pass released, that was silently removed from the past and the marketing. Nothing was ever said about it. So obviously, like, you should be reading what you're buying before you buy it, but I'm sure some people like saw the marketing, got excited about the pose maybe, and like bought it. It's just like, what happened there? And also the It's Not Over Yet special research has turned into kind of an annoying part of the event, because for most people who didn't complete it, you need to defeat or catch a Reshiram, I think a Zekrom, and you've got to fuse one of them. So if you didn't complete it during the weekend, it's just gonna be stuck in your special research tab until these Pokemon come back to raids, which is like, I don't know, this is kind of a funny thing to complain about, because like, who cares? You know, also it's me. I have like 100 unfinished researches in my research tab. So honestly, I'm happy about it because as an unfinished research collector, it's another one in my stack. But for some people, I know this is kind of annoying, so had to bring it up. Now, I know today's video is overwhelmingly more of an obviously negative video, but it's important to understand that not everyone had a bad time during this event, and if you had a good time, that's great. Don't listen to what I'm saying. As long as you had fun, that's great. I just want to make sure that we identify what about this event wasn't great compared to previous years so that future events could hopefully be great and better, and we could all have a much better and more fun experience. But some people did. Plenty of people caught a new shiny for the first time, got something new registered in their Pokedex, maybe got like a hundo from a raid or from the wild. Plenty of people had a great time, so like, that's awesome. And personally, I'm not exactly sure why they made the event so bad, you know? Like, there's a template that has worked for 4 years that everybody enjoyed, that everyone had a good time at, and I understand that like 2021 Kanto Tour happened during the pandemic, and the game is a completely different game now after the pandemic, but like, it was the best one they ever did, you know? So it feels like you'd look at that and try to understand why that was the best and keep those aspects, the ones that you can keep, for future events. But it just feels like every single year with the tour event, it keeps getting more watered down, more underwhelming, more like normal gameplay with a bit of a boost. And it just feels like a mushy, not very sparky, exciting experience. And like, that's kind of what happened during Unova Tour. Again, it was worse than Sinnoh Tour. Sinnoh Tour was worse than Hoenn Tour. Hoenn was worse than, you know what I'm saying? So when it comes to Pokemon Go live events, like, I'm just not really sure what to expect right now, because I definitely will say the game as a whole has felt just more stale. If you're new to Pokemon Go and everything is all exciting and amazing, that's great. Again, don't listen to what I'm saying. I'm an old, jaded player that's been playing nonstop for 9 years. So like, I have noticed the game's ups and downs, and like right now just kind of feels like a down in terms of in-game quality and event quality. Because even the regular events that are happening in Pokemon Go, like the week-by-week events, have all felt extremely underwhelming the last couple of months. A lot of very boring spawns, or the same kind of Pokemon spawning over and over again, not really many new releases or like game-changing thing. You know, like with the exception of like the Dynamax feature and the Gigantamax feature, everything has felt kind of bland. And Unova Tour felt kind of bland, which is crazy because it's a tour event. I'm just curious to see what this means for the rest of the future of Pokemon Go, because maybe things are bland right now because less people are working on the game in Niantic, because Niantic is about to sell Pokemon Go to another company. So they're just like turning operations down and maintaining the game. Then they'll sell it off to a new company who will then have to take the game and turn the operations back up, right? Maybe that's why things feel like they're kind of on autopilot and they're a little bit boring and bland, because like not a lot of thought or energy is being put into it because the game's selling to somebody else soon. That could be happening. Or the game's not selling and Niantic is just not focusing on the game. You know, I don't know. Maybe they're restructuring the company and there's like different like hires and changes and things happening, and maybe like the game will be better in like a month or two. Maybe by the time GoFest rolls around, it's going to be amazing. I don't know. Who knows? All I know is I did play the Unova Tour and I filmed, obviously, my experience of it, and the link for that video is down in the description below. Check that out, see what I got, and let me know in the comments, how did your Unova Tour weekend go? And I'll see you in that video in the description.